Hello you lovely lot and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Luce, I'm a fantasy obsessed book lover, and on my channel we talk about all things books. First of all, I just want to wish you guys the most magical, wonderful Christmas of all time ever. I hope it's amazing. In today's video we're going to be talking about the best books and the worst books of 2024 for every single month. So let's dive in. January actually started off really strong. I had a pretty good reading month in January. So picking my favourite read was actually quite easy, and that was of course The Grey Ship by Kim Leggett. This is a standalone dystopian novel and is all about the bonds between females and trying to bring down the patriarchy who is intent on crushing feminine strength and the courage that it takes to do that. Part coming of age story, part adventure story, and it is absolutely incredible. I still think about this to this day, and I know that's one of those books that I'm going to want to revisit time and time again. It's incredible. Picking my worst book for January was actually quite hard because there wasn't any standout reads which I was like I didn't have a good time with. I actually enjoyed all of the reads I had in January. So for me, I had to go with book 2 in the Air Awakens series by Elise Cover. Book 1 was a really good promising start to the series. Book 2 dropped for me slightly, and then book 3 was actually my favourite of the series so far. And I haven't actually carried on with the series, but I did enjoy it. It is really different to anything I've read before. So this series is actually about a library apprentice, a sorcerer prince, and an unbreakable magic bond. Yeah, for me, book 2 just fell off a little bit, which is why this made it onto the list of the worst books, but I actually enjoyed this series, and I'm not mad that I read it. February was the month of House of Flame and Shadow, and this was without a doubt my best read in February. I know people have got mixed feelings about this book. Some people love it, some people hate it. I am firmly on team love it. Crescent City is one of my all-time favourite series. I love her books and her worlds that she creates, and Crescent City is seriously underhyped in my opinion, and this was like a love letter to all Sarah J Maas fans. I thought I loved the plot twist. Yeah, we had some characters go off on a few tangents here and there, but it kind of just added to the story, and I absolutely inhaled this and adored it. And then my worst book of the month was Filthy Rich Vampire by Geneva Lee. I read the synopsis of this and it was like Gossip Girl meets Twilight, and I was like, wow, okay, I'm sold. I need to read this immediately. This just fell a little bit flat for me. Didn't really have the Gossip Girl meets Twilight kind of vibes that I was hoping for, and it also just felt a little bit boring. I just didn't love it like I thought I would, and so therefore that's my worst read of February. In terms of March, my best book and worst book are actually both romance books. And the best book was Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. I love the Magnolia Parks universe so much, and this book absolutely destroyed me. It broke me into tiny pieces. This is truly the Bible on grief, loss, and parental trauma. The things that happen in this book are just like heartbreakingly beautiful. It just spoke to me on a soul level, and I loved it so much. This was 5 stars through and through. But then on the other side of things, my least favourite, my worst book for March was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. Now I know people love this series. I had heard only good things about this, and I definitely can see why, but for me this was just too sweet, too predictable. Like everything happened so quickly, and I know that normally with romance you're wanting a palate cleanser, you probably know what's gonna happen, you probably know what's coming, but this was just like a different level. I was like, this is so easy, this is so sweet, very straightforward. And if you're wanting that kind of read, then definitely pick this up because that's exactly what this is. But for me it was just, there was no surprises in this. I just didn't love it. I just found myself bored. And then we've got April. April was one of my favourite months actually in terms of reads, and my favourite read has to be When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is incredible. It's a masterpiece, truly one of my all-time favourite ever reads. I love Sarah A. Parker. I love the worlds that she creates. I love the way that she writes. I think it's such a unique and beautiful experience to have as a reader. And for me, I literally remember reading this book and having to just look up from the page and be like, ah, I just need a minute to take in the beauty that is this book, because I am dumbstruck, I am awestruck, I am lost for words. I am completely and truly blown away by what this woman has created within the pages of this book. It was absolute pure magic. It's just one of those reads that stays with you. I feel like this is fantasy at its finest. The dynamic between our two main characters, the intimacy, the spice, the world building, the dragons, everything in this is absolute perfection, and I would not change a thing. And in terms of my least favourite, I probably would have to say The Veiled Kingdom by Holly Renee. The reason why I chose this one for my worst read is I actually really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it like a 4 stars, thought it was a really promising start to the series. But then later in the year I read book 2, And I know that we're not going off like other books, this is literally just based on what I read in that month, but book 2 was such a disappointment that now it's just changed how I view that first book completely. Therefore I'm like, do you know what? This series is not for me anymore. It's just completely lost all spark, lost all interest for me. Even though book 1 was good and a good start to the series, I know that I'm not going to be carrying on with this series. So for me, the worst book has to go to the Veil Kingdom. And then we go to May. Now May, I didn't have like a 5-star read. So for me, the book that was my favourite was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I think I gave this either a 4.5 or a 4.75. I didn't expect to love this as much as I did. This swept me away. It is really, truly a beautiful, beautiful story. Like nothing that I'd ever read before. I was thinking in my head before I went in that I was going to find this slow. I was going to be like, it was going to feel like a little bit of a chore to get through. And it wasn't. I was completely transported. I was completely swept up within the world. And I was intrigued as to where the story was going to go and how things were going to tie up in the end. And some of the characters in this really, they get you. They really, really get you. I felt like this was just absolutely heartbreakingly beautiful. One of a kind of read. And then sadly for me, the book that was the worst was Godkiller. I thought I was going to love this. I thought this was going to be a bit of me. And don't actually think I've struggled to read a book as much in my life as I did with this. This took me forever. It's not a big, it's literally like 290 pages of a paperback, and this took me like a week or more to get through. I was really struggling to pick this up, to find the motivation to read. I didn't find myself invested in the characters. I didn't find myself invested in the world building or the plot. And I just felt like everything took quite a long time to happen, even though it's only a short book. And the whole God concept of things for me didn't grab me. Didn't have my interest or hold my interest in any way, shape or form. I was just so glad to be done with reading this. And so for me, I was like, do you know what? I thought I was going to love this, and sadly, I just didn't. June was also a pretty good reading month. I read Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I have got to be honest, initially when I saw the cover of this, I was like, do you know what? I just don't know if this is going to be for me. I wasn't really sold on the cover, but then I picked it up and I read it. This book had me in the palm of its hand. Immediately. I was completely and truly hooked. Callie Hart is typically a dark romance writer, and you can tell within the spice and the intimacy and the romance within this book that really comes through. And this is Callie's first romantasy novel, and oh my good god, did she absolutely smash this. It is so damn good, so worth all of the hype that it is getting. And I can't recommend this enough, truly. One of my standout reads of the year, actually. Romantasy at its finest, and I bloody can't wait to read book 2. I'm so excited, and I just love the world in which she's created and how unique it is, because Romantasy has been done and done and done and done and done, and we're seeing a lot of it these days. And so to find an idea and a concept that doesn't feel recycled is a breath of fresh air as a romantasy reader. And this is truly that. It's all about alchemy and Quicksilver, and yeah, the concept is just brilliant. I love Kingfisher in particular. He is just a league of his own, and this book can do no wrong. Sadly, the worst book of that month for me was Cross the Line by Simone Sultani. This book, there's nothing really wrong with this book. It's F1 romance, and it's sweet, and it's got a little bit of spice, and it's predictable, but when you compare that to the other romance books I've read this year, it really does pale in comparison, and it doesn't stand out. And so for that reason, this had to be my worst. A few of the interactions in this made me cringe too, and so for that reason, I just fell out of love with it. Didn't love it, and it didn't sweep me away, and it didn't transport me, and it didn't have me giggling or kicking my feet, all the things that I want to have and do when I'm reading a romance book. Then moving on to July, my standout read has to be Golden Sun. This is a work of art. I've never experienced plot twists like it in my entire life. The plot twists in this were comparable to that of Game of Thrones, the episode Red Wedding. If you know, you know. The plot twists just keep on coming and keep getting better and bigger and more mind-blowing as the story continues, to the point where you're like, what is happening? I just don't know what to expect. Like, I feel as though the floor has bottomed out underneath me and everything I thought I knew, I don't know. It is plot, twist, sci-fi mastery. This is obviously book 2 in the Red Rising series, and it's a sci-fi world and truly so unique, so captivating, full of twists and turns, and will have you on the edge of your seat the entire way through. And then my worst book of the month was Reckless by Lauren Roberts. Now, I know that Powerless by Lauren Roberts has got a huge following, huge fan base. People love that book. And if you are one of those people, I really do love that for you. However, Powerless for me, I didn't love it like I thought I would. But I really wanted to give it another go, another try with Reckless, because the reasons why I didn't love Powerless was, one, because it felt too similar to the Hunger Games for me, and so that took me out of the plot. I thought with book 2 we might step away from the Hunger Games and it might come into like its own plot and its own territory, and I'd be really invested for that reason. This didn't bloody go anywhere. Nothing happened throughout the entire 300 or so pages of this book. Nothing happens at all. It all feels a bit predictable, and I know that Lauren came out and said that this was a filler book, but it really did feel like a filler book for me, and I thought I didn't love book 1, didn't love book 2, so I'm not going to carry on with this series. For me, this just carried on that same trajectory of a big huge flop. Okay, next we're moving on to August. August, I had some absolute belters, like truly standout reads in August. So picking one was, initially I thought this is going to be difficult, and then I saw what was on the list of contenders. I was like, okay, there's only one book that can be my best book, and it was obviously To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker. This is a new adult dark fantasy romance. It's a dark retelling of Rapunzel. I say this all the time, but this is tension at its finest within the pages of this book. You really go on some character development kind of journeys within this series. Emotionally, it takes you on one heck of a ride. You're going to feel things you didn't know you were capable of feeling. You're not looking at page numbers, you're reading because you're having a great time, and you never want it to end. This is the kind of read that you're going to have with this series. And then my worst book was Masters of Death by Olivia Blake, my first Olivia Blake book, and it just didn't hit for me. This is supposed to be like unique, full of banter, witty, and I can see why it's those things. I can see it, I can appreciate that, but our sense of humour just didn't align. I didn't find myself laughing. I didn't find it particularly funny. And also the storyline kind of was like trickling along, not really heading anywhere. And then even when it did go somewhere, I was like, oh, is that it? That was the kind of vibe and the experience I had with this one. My favourite read for September was, well, it's a tough one because I really obviously love the Crystal Bloom series, and so I read To Flame a Wildflower, so that immediately is like number 1, but I've already talked about Crystal Bloom. I've already like given that book and that series its moment. So the book that I'm going to choose as my best read for this month was Glow of the Everflame by Pen Cole. This series is so good. Book 1 was really a good start, truly. But then I got to book 2 and it's literally like drama, plot twist, so much happening, and I was swept away. This is the reason why I love romantasy. This is why. Like, it had everything that I love in it. It's got the slowest of slow burns, which keeps you intrigued and keeps you wanting to know where that's going to go and how it's all going to play out. So yeah, for me, Glow of the Everflame was an absolute major slay. Loved this so much. And then my worst book was actually Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I know so many people love this. It's supposed to be a cozy, whimsical, academia-ish, and got such mixed feelings about this because I can appreciate why people love it. I can totally see why this has got such a huge following and such a huge fan base, and I can appreciate the beauty of it. But for me, I just didn't find myself that invested in the characters. I found myself skim reading a bit, to be honest, with this one. I just was like, I'm waiting for something more to happen. Maybe cozy romance is just not my cup of tea because it just didn't hold my interest. So it's supposed to be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and fairies I didn't think featured that much in this book. I was expecting a lot of fairy content. There was not a lot of fairy content for me, or not enough, not to the level that I expected. And so I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, and it, for that reason, felt like a little bit of a disappointment. Then October was obviously spooky season, and my favourite read had to be A Diary of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a standalone, told in the form of letters through one of Dracula's brides. It is dark, it's seductive, but it's also emotive and heartbreaking. Such a unique combination of elements within the pages of this book. How it's written is absolutely beautiful. And I also think if you're in a book slump, this is perfect. I would definitely recommend recommend. If you're struggling and you're thinking about, I don't know what to pick up, try this, because I think this is going to be the perfect way to get you out of a reading slump. I loved it. I thought it was divine. I thought it was heartbreakingly beautiful. It made me feel, and I just absolutely adored this book. And then my worst book was Mistress of Lies by K.M. Enright. This is truly one of the most beautiful books I've ever seen in terms of the copy. It's an Illuminate edition. Because of how beautiful it was, I kind of expected myself to have a beautiful experience with this. I loved the character representation in this. The plot didn't really go anywhere. I was constantly waiting for something to happen, and I just didn't feel like a lot did happen. And I feel like it's a shame because it had the potential to be really good. But sadly, I was just like, give me more high stakes, give me more plot twists, give me something to work on here, because this, I just feel like I'm falling asleep within the pages of this book, and it just didn't fill the expectations that I had and that I hoped it would be. November's best read was obviously Funny Story by Emily Henry. My favourite Emily Henry read. I am a big Emily Henry fan anyway, but this one for me was just the best. It made me feel really seen and really understood. I just felt myself reflected a lot in the pages of this book, and so when a book hits you that deep and hits you that hard and you feel that kind of way, it can't be anything other than a 5-star read, and this truly was one of my favourite romances of all time. The way that Emily writes her characters and her relationships is some of my favourites. She really knows how to write imperfectly perfect characters who have flaws, who are dealing with their own personal things, and she does it in the most beautiful, profound way ever. And I will forever read every single thing that this woman writes. She can do no wrong. Emily Henry is the gift that keeps on giving. And my worst book has to be All the Devils by Caitlin Wilson. I really thought I was going to love this. First 100 pages, I was so invested. I was like, wow, this feels like it's going to be something special. And it also gave me similar vibes to Wednesday, the TV series initially. I love Wednesday so much, and I was like, wow, I think this could be one of my favourite reads. I actually love this, and I can't wait to see where it goes. And after the 100-page mark, I really don't know what happened. I could not concentrate for seeing plot holes. Now, I'm not the kind of person who reads for perfection. I don't read literary masterpieces. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, I can appreciate those things, but I read for a good time. I read for an experience and pure, true escapism. But for me, the plot holes in this were just like, I just don't understand what's happening, and I was left with so many unanswered questions too. So what started out as a book that was really promising and that I thought I was gonna love, in the end I was like, do you know what, this just felt so middle of the road for me. Then we get to December. December is still very much ongoing, and I have got some of my most anticipated reads left to read. So I don't know whether this is subject to change, but at the moment, with a week left to go, my favourite read of this month has to be Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. I have absolutely loved and adored this book so much. I've never read Christmas romance before, and this was everything I hoped a Christmas romance would be, and so much more. I absolutely bloody loved it. It was just Christmas perfection, and I'm almost nervous to read any more Christmas romance because I don't know how it gets better than this. This is set in Ireland. You've got fake dating, a snowed-in cabin, a sprinkle of Christmas romance, and it truly gets you in the Christmas spirit, in the Christmas mood. And I cannot say enough good things about this book. It's absolutely bloody brilliant. And then my worst book so far has to be Meet Your Match by Candy Steiner. This is ice hockey romance, so it's definitely given all the wintry romance vibes. First of all, let's start with the positives. I really like Candy's style of writing. I love that our female main character is a content creator. That was really interesting to read. And that's probably as far as we can go in terms of positives, because I didn't love the connection and the romance between these two. It was not my favourite. Really didn't enjoy our male main character in this. I was like, do you know what? He's just not a bit of me. Yeah, we're just, I don't love you. For that reason, this has kind of fallen to the bottom of the pile for December. But I'm really interested in learning about the other characters and their romantic relationships in the books moving forward. So definitely going to be carrying on with this series. But for me, this was just not my favourite romance that I've read this year. So those are my best books and worst books of every month for 2024. It's been an amazing reading year, and obviously the year isn't quite finished yet. We've still got a tiny little bit of reading to go. So I'm excited to see what those reads have in store. But as it stands, that's the way that this year has looked. Had some incredible reads. Excited to see what's going to be in store for next year. But that's everything for this week's video. I hope you all have a magical Christmas, sending you all lots of love, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next one.